And hopefully what you see now is my primary slide for the PCS Pipette Calibration Mystery Machine number 1. So if I could get a confirmation that that's what you see, that would be great.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, excellent. Thank you. All right. So as I mentioned, we'd love to hear your questions. And so those of you that may not be familiar with the chat on Teams, there's a little chat bubble. And if you go ahead and post your question, but please make sure to click the forward arrow. I know I myself have started typing messages to people, and then I see them in the caf or in the hall, and I'm like, hey, you didn't answer my message, and then come to find out I forgot to press the send button. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Don't forget to press the send button, and we're more than happy to answer those questions for you. So a little bit about who we are. Advanced Instruments, we're headquartered in Norwood, Massachusetts. And our company, we're actually celebrating our 70th anniversary this month. So this slide actually needs to be updated. We've been in the osmolality world for 70 years. And some of you might be familiar or have experience with our analytical instruments. We've got a global large install base in North America, as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. And we have 3 primary markets. So certainly biopharm, clinical, and food and beverage. And so back in June 2022, Advanced Instruments had acquired a small company named Artel. So let's talk a little bit about the Artel product portfolio specifically. So we've been in business since the early 80s, and our business model, our business line, our instrument line has to do with providing data integrity, regulatory compliance, and workflow efficiency for different parts and procedures within the laboratory. We're a global leader in liquid handling quality assurance, and that's just a really big fancy name for we're a global leader in low volume verification on devices. So we provide tools, systems, hardware, software to help you harmonize data quality by using our patented dual dye ratiometric photometric technology. So yet again, we've got another big word there. Dual dye absorbance just means that there's a red dye under test and a blue dye that's also included in the sample volume calculation. And with those 2 dyes, we're able to verify accuracy and precision down to 10 nanoliters with NIST traceable volumes for you. So low volume liquid verification, instrument service and training. Again, that's the Artel product portfolio. That's what we're all about. We consider ourselves a trusted customer focused partner. And that really made the acquisition by Advanced Instruments a wonderful acquisition because we had a lot of shared customers and certainly a lot of shared values between the 2 companies. So this next slide is meant to just give you a little bit of insight into our mission statement. So as you might expect, this is very, very high level, but our goal is to provide life science laboratories with expertise, the tools, the data, and the knowledge to help you achieve your goals for productivity, compliance, and quality. So really, what does that mean at the end of the day? Regardless of whether or not you are testing a single channel pipette in Boston or a multi-channel pipette in Brussels or an automated liquid handler in Beijing, we're able to provide those NIST traceable validated sample volumes for you on all of those instruments. And you can feel confident that the results that you're getting accurately depict how that device is performing. So there's a number of different volume measurement options that we provide. Of course, today we're here for our flagship instrument, the Artel PCS, the Pipet Calibration System. But we also have an Artel MVS, which is our multi-channel verification system, which is really designed for automated liquid handlers, as well as multi-channel pipette calibrations. We also provide automated liquid handling services. So maybe you've got those liquid handling robots, but perhaps you're not ready for the expenditure to have an Artel MVS in-house. Maybe you don't have the resources, but you still need to answer the question, how is that robot delivering for volumes? You can certainly rent, if you will, one of our field application scientists to come on site for an 8-hour chunk of time or more, and we'll test the robots for you. And then last but not least, we also provide pipetting technique certifications. And so I lead that team. It's definitely a very popular service that we provide. So some of the industries that we serve, right? We are well represented in all of the industries across the laboratory spectrum, if you will. So government, academia, as well as food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, forensics. And everyone has one singular goal, or they all have a singular goal in common, if you will, and that's to improve performance and competency of devices as well as operators. So when we think about our systems, right, there's a lot of typical concerns that we come up against when we're talking to people about what keeps you up at night. What are the pain points? Quality tends to be a pain point and something that laboratories need to focus on. It's something that has to happen. And then also cost is something that tends to keep people up at night as well. How much are we spending on overhead? How much are you spending on reagents? And, you know, what's the cost of an assay that has to be rerun? It's not just a cost of time, but also reagent usage, and then also customer perception potentially. And then there's a compliance piece, right? Most of us have a regulatory compliance piece that we have to adhere to. And so are we in compliance with how we're managing our pipette operators and our pipettes? And then time and rework really go hand in hand. Again, what's the cost for having to rerun a test? What's the cost for having to scrap product that has to be reworked because maybe there's been too much variability in the pipetting steps along the way? So how do we help, right? Certainly calibration of liquid delivery devices. So those liquid delivery devices might be manual devices, or they might be automated liquid handlers. They might be single channel devices or multi-channel devices. There also comes a time too where interim volume verification has to happen. So you've got your calibration schedule that maybe happens every 6 months or once a year, but maybe there's a need to perform interim volume verification on those devices. And those interim volume verifications could occur on liquid handler devices as well as pipettes in between those calibration cycles. Assay development. So oftentimes assay development happens on the bench where there's a lot of manual pipetting technique that's involved. And then that gets transferred over to the automated side of the house. And so what happens when those two sides don't have answers that match? And you have an assay that has two different results based on whether or not it's on the bench or whether it's an automation. We can help with that. And then pipette and tip qualification, so hardware qualification. Certainly what happened during COVID is supply went up, demand went down. A lot of customers were having to source tips from different areas. Maybe they couldn't get the pipette manufacturer brand tips because they were on back order. And so how do you know that the device that you've chosen or that you're getting ready to invest a lot of money into provides you the results that you need? And then training is another piece, and it's actually a pretty hot topic. Whether or not that's new hire training, maybe you're onboarding someone for the first time and you want to make sure that they know how to micropipette, or maybe there's competency training that happens. ISO 8655 came out with Part 10 last year that indicated that pipette operators have to be assessed a minimum of once a year. So being able to have those records of competency is important. And then performance monitoring, especially if there's a new assay that's coming into the manufacturing side of things. And so when we think about our systems, again, we've got a couple of different systems. The MVS system is pictured over on the far left. Again, that's really designed for multi-channel pipettes, automated liquid handlers. But we also have the PCS system. Again, that's what we're here to see today. Depicted over on the far right-hand side. So the PCS system is used to calibrate volumes down to 0.1 microliters up to 5,000 microliters. So a pretty broad range of volumes that you can test. But let's say you've got some larger volume pipettes in your laboratory, pipettes that are 10,000 microliters. How do you calibrate those? Our Artel software also has the ability to integrate supported balance models. So not just our MVS, not just our PCS, but also those supported balance models. And then also it has the ability to attach external records. So maybe you have to send a pipette out to a service because maybe you've performed a calibration, you've changed the seal and O-ring on the pipette, it still isn't passing. It needs a little bit of extra attention. You send it to a service center. The Artel application, that software can house those external report attachments as well. And then last but not least, there's a built-in pipette operator assessment module within the software. So lots of different things, all having to do with your in-house pipette quality management program, as well as your management of your automated liquid handler devices too. So when it comes to the PCS, the workflow is very, very easy. First and foremost, I just want to mention there's an optional email notification function for the Artel software. You can choose to enable that, or you can choose not to enable that. And if that email notification function is enabled, when pipettes are due, the owner of the pipette, you'll see in step number 1, receives an automated email from the software letting them know what pipettes are due for calibration. And then at that point, step number 2, the pipette's brought to the calibration lab, the calibration is performed. Step number 3, the person that's responsible for reviewing the calibration data receives an automated email from the system and reviews the data. And then once that data is reviewed and it's passing and approved, step number 4 happens. The system can generate a calibration sticker. You apply it to the pipette. You place that device back in service. So really, really easy workflow, and it's meant to be digital. So if you want to be completely paperless, our system can help you achieve that. All right, so I spent a little bit of time talking just some generic information. Let's get into some of the details about the PCS specifications. So for those of you where 21 CFR Part 11 compliance is important, so that's the management of electronic records. That's the visibility to audit trail, electronic signatures, things like this. There's a compliance suite add-on that you can add, that you can purchase with the Artel software that will give you that audit trail and electronic signature functionality. As I mentioned before, the system also enables you to perform operator competency assessments. So those could be trainer-led operator competency assessments or self-assessments. You get to choose. The Artel software utilizes an SQL database structure. So you might be wondering, why am I taking the time to share this with you? Well, the SQL database structure is really a fantastic database structure to have, because you can have multiple people accessing the same database sets in SQL for our software, and the system's not going to slow down. And it has the ability to grow exponentially, put a lot of data into the database. You don't ever have to worry about it getting laggy, or certainly not in our lifetime. In addition, if you wanted to have the software installed on a client server type of infrastructure, so maybe you've got 20 computers that all need to be able to access the same database. Instead of installing the Artel software on 20 different computers, that's not going to work out too well. You can install the Artel database on your on your network server, and then you can have those 20 client computers pointing to that database that's on your network server. And then last but not least, there's also the ability to enable Windows Active Directory integration. So that saves you from having to keep track of yet another username and password for logging in. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the regulatory piece. When we think about the PCS system, I mentioned that dual die ratiometric photometric method. And that method is described in ISO 8655 Part 7. It's also described in the photometric reference measurement procedure that's described in ISO 8655 Part 8. And for PCS customers that are in the clinical side, we also provide the system can fulfill test and calibration requirements according to CLSI QMS 23. If you're an accredited 17025 laboratory, or maybe you're a GMP or GLP facility, our system is housed in all of those different facility types and is used for pipette calibration, as well as operator assessment, interim pipette verification, all of those different tasks and functions. Now, there's some optional items for the system itself. If you need to have the system validated, we have a validation procedure that you can optionally purchase. There's also a travel case for the system. So maybe you're sharing the PCS system amongst sister facilities. There's a travel case that is specifically designed and created for the PCS system. We also have on-site installation validation and training. So if you want one of our field representatives to come on site, perform that installation and validation and user training for you, we can do that. There's extended warranties also available for this system. And then again, that 21 CFR Part 11 compliance suite add-on for those of you that might need to have the audit trail and electronic signature capability. There's that as an optional item as well. All right. So when we think about the PCS system, and you're going to see this live in action in just a moment, but we start with a blank vial. So the blank vial has blue dye in it. And what happens is when I insert that blank vial into the instrument, there's a 730 nanometer filter that reads the absorbance of that blue dye and provides, based on the wavelength, provides a baseline absorbance value for what's getting ready to happen. And then I come by with my pipette. I aspirate some red dye. Again, the red dye is the measurement step, if you will. There's a vortex mixer that mixes the dyes together inside the instrument, and my volume magically appears and quickly appears. So what's happening when I add that red dye? After I've added the red dye, there's a second filter that reads at 520 nanometers, and that will read the absorbance of the red dye. And together, the absorbance of the red dye and the blue dye, we will calculate your sample volume using Beer-Lambert law and using that ratiometric measurement and calculation for you. All right, I'm going to quickly go through these next few slides because I'm going to show you the software live. So the Artelware software, it has an easy logical setup using the Get Started bar. So oftentimes you install the software, you get a system, you're like, what do I do now? Where do I go now? The Get Started bar just really provides a very logical sequence of events on what you need to accomplish. The home screen is customizable. So let's say you've got 10 different laboratories, and each laboratory has 100 pipettes in each laboratory. And maybe you're responsible for calibrating laboratory A's pipettes only. When you log in, you can certainly have the home screen only display laboratory A's pipettes. So that way you're kind of getting rid of the noise from the other 9 laboratories. So there's some customization that happens on the home screen. And in addition, remember that optional email notification component of the software. This just gives you up close some examples of when those emails get parsed out. So when pipettes are due or operator assessments are due, people will receive automated emails from the system. Anytime a calibration needs review, an automated email would go out as well. And then as well as for some other administrative functions that have been performed, those automated emails will get parsed out. So again, that's optional. You don't need to enable email functionality with the Artelware application, but you can. And it's pretty powerful when you combine that with a client server type of infrastructure when the software is installed. There's also, of course, we've got reports and labels. And so over on the right-hand side, that gives you an example of what a full-size Pipette calibration report looks like. If you wanted to change the title on that report, if you wanted to upload your logo or your address, or maybe you've got a 17025 accreditation logo that you wanted to include in your report, you can make that report customizable based on the work that your facility is doing. And then over in the lower left-hand corner, the system generates 2 types of labels. It generates a barcode ID label, which has some customizable fields, as well as a calibration label, which is also customizable based on different things that you might want to see on your labels. And you'll see me generating some labels when I get to the live system demonstration. There's a number of different reports that you can generate from the system. If you wanted an inventory report of all of your pipettes or all of your operators, you wanted to know when those devices, for example, were last calibrated, when they're next due, the system can give you lots of different reports based on the information that you're looking for. All right, so we're nearing the end of the slides because I know that's like, oh my goodness, I don't want to PowerPoint you to death. I promise I don't want to do that. But you might be thinking, why PCS and ratiometric photometry? I've been using this balance for the longest time. I'm pretty content with that. I've got the process down. When you think about the PCS instrument, again, that ratiometric photometry, it's not dependent on a controlled environment. So there's a really wide temperature and humidity range that the PCS instrument can operate in. So you don't need to have an expensive climate-controlled laboratory. The system can be used on any lab bench. You don't need to have a marble tabletop or a marble bench top for this system. It's meant to be portable. So it's meant to be used in different labs. And why is that important? There's a part of ISO 8655 that talks about the importance of knowing how pipettes are performing in the conditions that they're being used in. So in the laboratories that they're actually being used in, because they might perform differently from lab to lab if the environments are different. And so again, it's meant to be portable. It's meant to be easy. And so when we think about why the PCS and ratiometric photometry, those are some of the key reasons why. All right, so next up, we've got the PCS 510 package. So what do you get when you order the system? So certainly you get the instrument. You also receive the laptop with the Artelware software. If you're unable to purchase a laptop and you just want to install the Artelware software in one of your facility computers, you can certainly do that. You receive a label printer so that you can generate those labels that I was talking about earlier. And of course, all of the things that you need to get started with regards to pipette calibration, as well as a calibrator kit for the system. So lots of things come in the one package. All right. So one of the things I want to mention is that those of you that are participating and are attending today's demonstration are automatically enrolled into a lottery to win a mystery machine lab coat that's customized to you, that has your name on it, etc. And for each of the system demonstrations that we're performing this week, so for the Artel PCS, which is what we're here today, the Osmo Pro Max, the Glow Sight, and the Noxamat, each of those system demonstrations enter you again into that lottery to win that lab coat. So at the end of my system demonstration, I'm going to announce who that winner is. And so if you're interested, and maybe you ignore me until the very end, that's A-okay, I get that. But we'll be announcing the winner of that mystery machine customized lab coat at the end of the demonstration. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the live demonstration. I'm going to kind of stop sharing my screen. No, I'm going to kind of change my screen. And hopefully at this point, what you now see is the Artelware home screen. So if I could get a confirmation on that, that would be great. Does everyone see the Artelware home screen now?
Yes, we do.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, the Artelware software, that's your repository for all things related to pipettes, pipette calibrations, interim verifications, pipette operator assessments, etc. And so the Get Started bar, as I mentioned, that's really just your easy logical sequence and how to get things started. And so you'll notice that at the very bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it shows that I'm logged in as Artel admin. And that's just a default administrator login for the system. But I'm going to log in as some different users just so that you can get some exposure to what the real workflow would look like. But first and foremost, there's a few things that I've already done. I've already added some users. I've already added some locations. I've already added my PCS instrument, which is what I'm going to be using today. But what I want to walk you through is adding a device, as in adding a pipette, adding a pipette calibration plan, and also adding a pipette calibration schedule. So those of you that are interested, if you want to see the software screen, anytime that you see a thumbnail of either me or the system, because I'm going to be changing my video or my camera over so that you can see the hardware side of things here in a moment. Anytime that you click on the thumbnail, that can become your primary screen. So you can actively click back and forth on thumbnails within Teams to see something close up if that's what you're interested in. So I'm going to click on Add Device here, and I'm going to click on Add Pipette. So let me go ahead and just move this over. I'm going to click OK. And so everything that you see that has a red asterisk is a required field in Artelware. And so what I'm going to do is click on the ellipsis. And from here, if I click on the manufacturer drop-down box, you can see that we've preloaded a number of pipette manufacturers for you. So today I'm going to be using a Rainin pipette. So I'm going to select Rainin for my manufacturer. And the moment that I do that, I see all kinds of different Rainin pipette models. The way that I like to navigate this model list is I like to think of it as Excel, and I like to click on the max volume column so that way it sorts everything in order. And what I'm looking for is I'm going to be using a 2 to 20 microliter single channel XLS pipette. And it's not this electronic pipette, it's going to be this pipette here. So it's a variable volume pipette, 2 to 20 microliters. Single channel, I'm going to click OK. So the moment I select the Rainin and the Rainin pipette model, these next three fields automatically populate. So the ISO device type, the number of channels, I'm just confirming the number of channels is indeed just one, and the volume range is 2 to 20. So next I have to populate the pipette ID field. So that pipette ID field could be the serial number that's etched on the pipette itself, or it could be an internal asset ID. I'm going to go ahead and just call this pipette ID today's date, just to keep things simple for us. The description and the serial number field, those are optional. I am going to go ahead and just add the pipette's actual serial number here. And then I have to assign a location and an owner. Again, the reason where that owner comes in is if you decide to enable the optional email notification feature for Artelware, the owner is going to receive those automated emails letting them know when pipettes are due for calibration. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipsis, and I'm going to choose Southside Laboratory for my location for this pipette. And then I'll go ahead and select an owner for this pipette as well. And before I commit to this and select save, I'm just taking one last look through, making sure that all of this information is what I want it to be, especially the pipette ID, and it is. So I'm going to go ahead and select save. So I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to change my camera angle so that you can see the system hardware. So you should be able to see the PCS instrument itself, as well as the label printer. And then I've got some pipettes and some solutions over here to the right-hand side. Now that I've created my pipette entry, I'm going to actually create a pipette barcode ID label. So I'm going to go to this printer icon and select pipette label. And I'll let my label maker do its hard work. And I've generated a barcode ID label. Now I'm going to show you why I like barcode ID labels a lot. It's an optional label that you can generate. If you don't want to generate the label, you don't have to. But I like it. It's a really quick way to get to a calibration screen, which you'll see in just a moment. So I'm going to head back to the home screen. And now I need to create a plan for this pipette calibration. So the plan is where I tell the system what are the volumes that I'm testing, what are pass or fail, and how many replicates am I taking as well. So I'm going to call this plan April 25th. And this is a 20 microliter variable pipette. And I'm only going to be testing it at 10 and 20 microliters. And the measurement type that I'll be using, there's a couple of different options if you're using the Artel MVS, but of course we're using the PCS. So there's PCS, balance, manual entry. Those are all the same selection. And then the number of replicates defaults to 10, but I'm going to change that to 5 because I don't want to make you sit through watching me dispense 10 replicates. So from here, now that I've defined the number of replicates, I now need to define my tolerances. What are the volumes that I'm testing at, and what are pass or fail? Now, the tolerance sources, I just wanted to show you real quick. You have a few selections for your tolerance source. You can choose ISO 8655 tolerances. They updated their tolerances in 2022. You could choose your own tolerances. You could choose pipette manufacturer tolerances. If you select manufacturer ISO tolerances, you then see this little multiplier box come up in case you wanted to multiply those tolerances. But for today, I have a user-defined tolerance that I'm going to apply. So next I need to make a decision. What are the things that I'm evaluating? Am I evaluating inaccuracy or imprecision, or both? And for pipette calibration, I'm going to select both. I'm interested in both of these statistics. And then you also have an option to report your statistics out in absolute volume or percent. I'm going to leave this box unchecked. I like to see the percent because it represents all of the data points as a whole. So now this is where I need to add some volume. So the first volume I'm going to test is 10 microliters. And I have some user-defined tolerances that I'm going to enter in for inaccuracy and imprecision. And then I'm also going to test this pipette at 20 microliters. And yet again, I've got some user-defined tolerances that I'm going to add. And then I'm just taking a look back through. I'm going to test this pipette today for you at 10 microliters and at 20 microliters. So I'll go ahead and select approve. And now that calibration plan is in my list. So I'm going to go ahead and head back to the home screen. So one thing I want to bring your attention to is this due bar. So this due bar tells you all the things that are due. In this case, in the next 14 days, you can see that I have one pipette that's due. It has a little red triangle. That means that pipette's overdue. And the reason why I want to show that to you is when I add this next schedule, I'm going to add the pipette that I just created, and you'll see the number of pipettes change from one to something else. So the moment I click on Create Schedule, I have a few options of the types of schedules I want to create. I can create a Pipette Calibration schedule, an operator assessment schedule, etc. But of course, we're dealing with Pipette Calibrations today. So I'm going to call this April 22nd, 2025 semi-annual schedule. Whoops. And from here, I can select how often this schedule repeats. So it's semi-annual, so I'm going to have this repeat every 6 months from the completion date of when I actually perform the calibration. So next I need to add some pipettes to this schedule. So here's the pipette that I just created. And here's the calibration plan that I just added. And then over here, I'm just confirming, am I taking 5 replicates? Am I testing at 10 and 20 microliters? Yes. So I'll go ahead and click OK. But let's say I have another pipette that I need to add to a different schedule, and that pipette has a different next due date. I can have one master schedule where I just continually keep adding all of these pipettes with different due dates and let the system run things for me. So all of the work happens up front. So now if I go back to that home screen, you can see that now instead of 1 pipette due, I have 2. And I've completed all these get started tasks. So when I say all the work happens up front, kind of like a crock pot, you prepare all of your ingredients, you throw them into the crock pot, you press go. That's what happens with the system, with the PCS system as well. Someone or some people have to preload all the information into the software, and then you just follow the software when it tells you that calibrations are due. So I'm going to go ahead and log out of the software, and I'm going to log in as an operator because I want you to be able to see the differences in how the screens look. So you can have permissions-based users. You get to define what permissions the user has. I'm now logged in as an operator, and you can see that my home screen looks a lot different. I don't have the options to add things on the Get Started bar because I simply don't have permissions for them. As an operator, I have permissions to start calibrations and perform calibrations, but really I'm limited outside of that. So there's a couple of different ways that you can start a calibration. You can click on this do bar and then select the pipette that you want to calibrate. You can click on this Calibrate Pipette shortcut. You can also click on this calibration icon to the left, but I like to click on Scan Barcode because that's where I use that barcode ID that I generated earlier when I created the pipette. So the PCS instrument has an onboard barcode ID scanner. And you might notice that I just scanned that barcode, and now the software has changed. It's now asking me, what would I like to do? I would like to perform a schedule calibration. So I'm going to go ahead and check or click on the box for Perform Schedule Calibration. And once I'm in this screen, I'm going to confirm, is this the pipette? Is this the calibration plan in the schedule? Yes, it is. So I'll go ahead and select Start Calibration. Now, I have a couple of options. I can calibrate with the PCS, or I can manually enter in some data. Well, of course, today is a PCS demo. So I'm going to go ahead and select the PCS and click OK. And then from there, I'm following the software prompts. So at this point, I'm being asked to scan the Qual-Assure 3 bottle. So I just want to show you real quick, this solution specifically can run 10 to 49 microliters. So I'm going to go ahead and scan this bottle as per the software instruction. And then I'm just going to wait for more instructions from the software. So right now, the system is getting itself prepared. All right, so next I'm being asked to scan a blank vial. So that blank vial, this is the vial that I dispense all of my red dye into. So I'm going to go ahead and scan that. A couple of pieces of information about this blank vial. If I was testing 10 microliters, I could get 40 data points into that one blank vial. I just keep adding the red dye, until the system tells me to change the vial. If I'm testing 1,000 microliters, I can get 5 data points in that one blank vial. So the system keeps track. You essentially You keep adding your red dye dispenses into that blank vial, and when the system tells you to change it, you change the vial. So the software, you can see it says remove cap, insert blank vial. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that cap, insert the blank vial. And now that I've inserted it, the software says, please close the lid. So this PCS instrument also has what we have a capacitive touch sensor lid. And what that means is I can just touch the side and the lid will close and the vortexer will start vortexing. So I want to bring your attention back to the software for just a moment. The software is showing me a lot of useful information. So it's telling me that I'm currently testing 10 microliters, Qual-Assure 3 solution. It's a single channel device. I'm going to take 5 replicates. And here are those preloaded tolerances that I loaded in earlier. And so now the system is asking me for pipette sample number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just pour out an aliquot of this solution. And I'll grab my pipette, place a tip on it. I'm just going to adjust my pipette volume down to 10 microliters real quick here. Alrighty, so now we're going to get started. I'm just going to pre-wet my pipette a few times before I get started. And I'm going to make my first dispense into the instrument. And after I make my dispense, I'm going to close the lid, and the vortexer is going to vortex and mix that blue dye in that vial with the red dye that I just dispensed. And here's my first volume, 9.827. So I'm going to go ahead and deliver the rest of these replicates. And what will happen is you see that there's a green box for inaccuracy. And hopefully in just a moment, you'll see a green box for imprecision as well. So it keeps running statistics based on every replicate that you're delivering into the system. I'm going to have you keep an eye on those green boxes because in just a moment, I'm going to make them turn red. All right, so keep an eye out for those boxes. All right, so those boxes have just turned from green to red. So I intentionally didn't dispense all of my solution on that very last replicate. So the system has the ability to enable you to redo replicates. Maybe you had a gross error like the one that I just had. And so once you've dispensed all of the volumes for a particular data set, you have the ability to go back and select a data point in that grid and click in this redo replicate box. The moment you do that, the system is going to force you to enter a comment. So I'm going to say residual in tip. And I'll go ahead and click OK. And then the system opens again. It wants me to go ahead and make another 10 microliter dispense. So I'll go ahead and do that. And hopefully we'll see those red boxes turn green again. All right, so now our red boxes have turned green. So here's our ending statistics, minus 1.89 for inaccuracy, and my tolerance is plus or minus 4%, so I'm well within tolerance. My imprecision is 0.22. My tolerance is less than or equal to 2%, so I'm happy with that as well. So if I'm following the instructions at the top of the software, it says review data, select next volume. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now I'm going to test that second volume of 20 microliters. So again, this bottle of solution can test 10 to 49 microliters. So both volumes that I'm testing today use the same solution. I'm going to go ahead and just adjust my pipette volume up to 20 microliters this time. All righty, and then I'll take these 5 20 microliter replicates for you. All right. We'll see if I can intentionally do better on this one than I did on the 10. Okay? So again, I just keep adding my dye, my red solution, my red dye, until the system tells me that I need to change that blank vial, that vial with the blue solution in it. All right, I'm almost done. There's nothing like watching someone pipette into a system, I'm sure. All right, so now I've reached the end of that 20 microliter data set. If I take a look at my tolerances, I'm within that plus or minus 2%. This pipette's under delivering a little bit, but it's within tolerance, so I'm happy. And then imprecision is also well within tolerance. So there aren't any data points that I want to redo, but what I would like to do is I'd like to add a comment. So maybe I change the seal and the O-ring on this pipette. So I'll go ahead and make that comment. But then maybe also I'm a 17025 accredited laboratory and I have to record the environment for this calibration. So I can click on record environment and I can record the environmental factors. So in this case, you see red asterisks next to temperature and humidity. That means I have to record both of those parameters. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And at this point, I'm ready to select finish. Now, the moment I select finish, my particular workflow for my pipette calibrations requires that I have a separate person review my calibration data. Now you can change that workflow in the Artel software so that the person who's calibrating is also the same person that's reviewing, one and the same. You don't need a separate level reviewer, but in my case, I do have a separate level reviewer, and that's reviewer 1. So I'm going to go ahead and select OK. And if I had the automated email notification feature of Artel enabled, that reviewer 1 will have just now received an email from the system indicating that there's a calibration report that has to be reviewed. So this gives you your initial report. So what do I mean by initial? Remember, this calibration is not completed until it's been reviewed. But let's take a look at the report. All of the information you would expect to see about the pipette, a unique calibration ID, the calibration plan, the date of calibration, everything about the statistics. So you might remember that I had that data point that I did a redo on. So it doesn't get swept under the rug and completely disappear. It's not included in the final calculation statistics, but it is showing on the report to show that a redo had been performed. If I continue down, you can see all of the information that I had entered in about the environment, everything that I scanned for solutions and vials with the system. That gives me full traceability to all the items that I used for this pipette calibration. The same type of workflow is used for operator assessments. You'll see all of the same information. The operator comments, remember I entered a comment about changing the seal on the O-ring. That's also on this report. And then if I continue to scroll, you'll see information about the PCS system when it's next due for calibration. And in this particular case, I don't have the compliance suite electronic signatures enabled. So you do see operator information here, but the signature boxes are blank because, again, I don't have the e-signatures enabled. But then down bottom, you see the Advanced Instruments logo, the address, etc. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head back to the home screen, and I, as the operator, let's say I just had that one calibration to perform. The reviewer, let's go ahead and log in as the reviewer. And let's see what type of screens the reviewer sees. So now that I'm logged in as a reviewer, my screen looks a little bit different, right? You can see that I've got 2 calibrations that are ready for review in my ready for review bar. If I click on that, I can now see the pipette that I just calibrated, that was just calibrated today. I can click on View Report. And from here, I can go and take a look at all of the data. I can take a look at the statistics, the operator comment that's here, etc. And then as a reviewer, I can choose to either approve or reject this calibration report. If I reject it, the pipette will still stay due. I'm going to approve it. It looks pretty good to me. And at the same time, because my label printer is connected to the same computer that I, the reviewer, am on, I'm also going to have the system print a calibration label for me the moment the approval goes through. So let's go ahead and take a look at that label. So here's that label. That calibration label is now showing a next due date in October 22nd, 6 months from today. Calibration label tells you when it was calibrated, who did it, okay? So all of the information that you would expect to see. I'm going to change the camera back to me so that way you don't hear a voice pointing to instruments. And at this point, you have a few options. You can choose to export your report to PDF, Word, or Excel, or you could also choose to print that report to a full-size printer. Now, I don't have a full-size printer hooked up to this computer, so I'm going to export this report because the last thing I'm going to leave you with is, or the last thing I want to show you today, is how you can attach external reports into the system. So I'll go ahead and select Save, and I'll close out of that screen. Great. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll log back in as the operator. With me, I go around the corner a little bit. So again, the last thing I wanted to leave you with is how to attach an external service report that maybe a Pipette Service Center had provided to you. You can click on this calibration icon that's over here to the far left, and then you can select Ad Hoc Pipette. And this is the pipette that I just created today. The calibration type is external, right? So things are going to look a little different. This workflow looks slightly different. It's an external calibration because the pipette went out for service and repair. So from here, I can select Start Calibration. I can browse to the desktop to that service report that I had exported. You can see here that I can choose pass or fail for a status. I can actually choose the calibration date. I can also enter in some summary statistics for that service report, but I'm not going to do that because that just puts me at risk for putting in incorrect information. But what I am going to do is upload that external calibration. Again, it follows the same workflow. So my reviewer 1 has to review the data. But one thing that's a little different is you'll notice my report looks a little empty. And it says, see attached calibration record for summary information. So now if I click on this paper clip that's right here, I can now see that report that I had attached to Artelware. And so that report actually lives in the Artelware database, showing me that external report attachment that came from the service center. All right, so that's all I had to share with you today. I'm going to just go in and take a peek at the chat, see if there's anything in there that we need to go and address. And again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join me for this Mystery Machine #1 demonstration of our Artel PCS system. I hope all of you have a wonderful day.